Good afternoon. This is Pender Makin, Commissioner of Education for the state of Maine, and I'm providing a public briefing regarding our preparation and response thus far to the COVID-19 emergency. Today is June 2nd, 2020. I'll start with a little background and context. In our first year of this administration, we prioritized a focus on relationship building and trust building with the constituents we have in the field in order to allow us to become a more effective Department of Education that could provide services that would be readily accepted and welcomed by the field. And during this time of unimaginable separation and disruption through the emergency we're facing right now, we have been so grateful that we started that work early on. And I believe we had very positive relations with the field and had earned a modicum of trust as we entered this very unprecedented situation. In early January of this year, we determined our strategic priorities for year 2, 2021, and our focus is on equity, excellence for students, and health, safety, and well-being for students, staff, and school communities. And these strategic priorities hold still now. You'll hear more about that later in the presentation, but we were very grateful to have had this framework so that we were able to hold strong on much of what we had started, even in the face of this challenge. We also developed something called the School Safety Center. This is part of our Office of School and Student Supports, and the Safety Center provides training, technical assistance, and professional development to districts and schools across the state with respect to school-wide trauma-informed practices and with respect to the development or the revision and updating of emergency preparedness and response plans, training of the teams who implement safety and emergency response plans. And I can't even tell you how incredibly valuable this organization has been in terms of supporting the Department of Education in our work of supporting the field throughout this emergency. The Maine School Safety Center is partnering with local, county, and state emergency management directors. Ahead of the emergency, the Maine Department of Education and the Department of Health and Human Services and the Governor's Office met with the Emergency Management Agency, MEMA, to develop a communication and decision-making plan. We also, the Governor's COVID response team began meeting 7 days per week in early March. Maine Department Commissioner and my deputy, Dan Chuda, we began meeting 7 days per week also with the Emergency Operations Center and the Center for Disease Control. So we've been staying really up to date on everything to do with this emergency. And finally, our communications team has been meeting 5 days each week since early March with statewide communications teams to ensure alignment and that clear and accurate messaging goes out across the state. On March 5th, DOE directors held a webinar for school leaders on planning for the impending crisis. And the next day, DOE directors and leadership held an emergency in-person information session with over 100 superintendents at the Augusta Civic Center. Also ahead of the emergency, we held our first ever Zoom meeting as a Department of Education on March, I believe it was, 14th and 15th, Saturday and a Sunday, to provide support to district leaders who were having to make extraordinarily difficult decisions during those days. And we worked with the Governor's Office to help districts make timely decisions and recommendations for school districts. Ahead of the emergency, the Maine DOE team also set up our COVID-19 webpage, which is filled with resources for educators and families and students and in fact is visited heavily nationwide by educators. And we have also heard that we have friends in Canada who also use the Maine Department's COVID-19 webpage as their go-to resource. We're really proud of that because it is just a really high quality batch of resources. And I'll show you a little bit of what that looks like. We have ongoing updates with respect to the coronavirus status in our state. We also have content and instructional resources, formative and summative assessment resources, thousands, literally thousands of links to online learning resources, and other links that can help school leaders and educators or families or anybody in need of help to access information. We also have daily virtual meetings that are live consults with DOE specialists, and I'll show you a weekly meeting list for teachers. For example, this week, live office hours include brain-centered emotional support and special purpose private schools and special education and health education and physical education. We have, this is this week alone, offered by our wonderful content specialists. And also there's information on there for school business managers and school finance related things, school safety and emergency preparedness. We also have a great resource for parents. If you click this link, continuity of learning for parents who are trying to support kids at home. The learners at home are often not the only learner in the family, and also the family members are often working from home, trying to manage jobs. And so there's a number of strategies and tips for just creating the right environment. And also there's motivational and emotional well-being. And then there are just so many links to resources that are particularly great for families to access. They're kind of do-it-yourself opportunities for those who want to engage in enrichment above and beyond what the educators are assigning and providing. So there's just an awful lot here. Notice there's virtual field trips. At any rate, our website was highlighted the week before the emergency was officially declared in a New York Times article as being a great resource. And later we saw that we were mentioned as, in fact, we were the exemplary example of a school education department providing resources for the field on the PBS NewsHour show. So just have to put a plug out there for our communications team and all of the specialists who have loaded the content on there for providing this really robust opportunity. Our COVID website, as I mentioned, includes all of these items here. When the COVID-19 virus did make its way into Maine and community spread became apparent, we focused on safety, basic needs, and connectedness. And these priorities, health and safety, child and nutrition, connections, that includes connectivity to the internet, but also connections between our DOE team and the educators who really needed the support that we had to offer, and also connecting educators to one another. We also were focusing on social emotional well-being and behavioral and mental health, academic continuity, and systemic logistical support. And I will go through each of these throughout this presentation so you can see what we were offering. By way of child nutrition, we have ensured that every community in our state has access to a food service site. There are 199 programs and over 700 meal delivery sites throughout the state. And in April alone, Maine schools provided 2.1 million meals to children And there was $7.2 million of federal reimbursement provided to Maine schools as a result of that. The department hosts a weekly webinar to support child nutrition service professionals in their reporting and tracking and operating of remote meal programs. On our website, both the COVID-19 website and on the child nutrition website, you can find this live heat map where families are able to click and find nearby nutrition sites. So you can check that out. We also, our child nutrition team worked really hard with the Department of Health and Human Resources to ensure that families who receive food assistance would get additional resources if they had children in Maine's public schools. So there's an enhanced SNAP benefit. I'm going to talk a little bit about our emergency communications and need to pause for just a moment to note that in leadership school, they tell you that in any challenge or difficult time or crisis or time of change, the first thing to go is communications, and they always take a hit, whether real or perceived. And we have had nothing but warm and grateful feedback from the field and from all of our constituents with respect to the communications, the quality, the seamless and ongoing amount of communication that we've been putting out there. And a couple examples we have here are town hall meetings that we have attended and hosted. Even they were actually hosted by the MEAA, but our department staff and leadership attended those. And we also participated in weekly meetings with superintendents, with the curriculum leaders, with the Maine Principals Association, and with the directors of special education services. We meet twice each week with a group of stakeholder organizations leaders, and we've held 2 emergency meetings of our student cabinet. This is a group of students who represent every county in the state, and they are fourth grade through first year college age students. And we've used them for a number of, they've been an incredible resource to the department. But in this case, we held a meeting to check in on how is it going with respect to the online emergency style remote learning. And we held another meeting specifically to try and get their bright, fresh brains to help us to find the gifts and opportunities for innovation that are inherent in a disruption such as this. And we really wanted to have them assist us in creating a vision for what might be the next iteration of public education. We've also been supporting the SAUs, those are the school districts, with their communications to families and community members by sharing exemplar communication letters and other types of resources. We did adjust our strategic plan while keeping our main goals of equity and excellence and health, safety, and well-being intact. And we identified 3 new overarching objectives based on the stakeholder-informed, the stakeholder feedback that we got from, as I mentioned earlier, multiple and diverse perspectives. So our goals, number 1 goal was 100% student access to the internet. So I thought that that would be like just a floor, like a baseline expectation that every child should have access to the internet, and that would be a pretty decent goal. We learned later that this is apparently a revolutionary goal, and that Maine might be the first state to set such a goal and to actually be meeting such a goal. We also prioritized, with help from our stakeholders, an online learning platform that will allow for anywhere, anytime learning. And also we're leveraging inherent opportunities within the crisis to examine and to improve our systems. The hashtag Connect Kids Now initiative, that being our universal access to the internet effort. We sent out our first survey during the very first week of the declared civil emergency in order to get a sense of how many children were unable to access the internet in K through 12. As a result of that data that came in, we partnered with Connect Maine Authority and with charitable organizations to begin meeting those needs. We sent 3 subsequent surveys for a total of 4 surveys, and ultimately have discovered that 84% of Maine schools report having students with no access to the internet, at least some students without connectivity. And the number of students was over 24,000. 24,000 students across the state lacked access to the internet. And that is something that was originally, we knew that there was inequitable access. We had no idea of the scope. Now we do. We also thought it was a concerning inequity, and now we believe it would be an outright humanitarian crisis, given the complete separation and isolation that has resulted from the COVID-19 emergency. And so I'm really proud of our effort to make sure that all of our students can be connected to the internet. After receiving data from the first 3 surveys, we were able to meet 100% of the reported needs. And after that was announced, we heard from a few other districts that had not been able to engage in the first 3 surveys. So we sent a 4th survey, and now those needs have been addressed. The orders have already been placed, and 100% of the reported needs will have been met. And we are super grateful to our partners in the Department of Administrative and Financial Services, whose procurement specialists helped us to get the very best deals when it came to accessing cellular data plans for these kids and their families. Our Anywhere, Anytime Learning, the learning space. This is a really cool project. When in the interim time between recognizing we had disconnected children and when we were able to actually access connectivity for them, we were really trying to think, how do we get Maine children in front of Maine educators, providing some sort of educational experience for them? And we partnered with Educate Maine and with the Maine Public Broadcasting Network to create something called the Learning Space. Features Maine teachers, their own personally developed lessons that they teach to grades 3 through 5 every single day, Monday through Friday, from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock on your local Maine Public Broadcasting Network station. So if you haven't checked it out, I really urge you to check out the Learning Space, and I will show you that all of the previous episodes are archived on Maine Public's website and also on the Maine Department of Education's website. And I can show you a couple of examples right here.
Hi Maine students, my name is Heather Whitaker and I'm your 2020 Maine Teacher of the Year. I would like to welcome you to the Learning Space. First, we want you to know how much your teachers miss you, your curiosity, love of learning, and enthusiasm. We also know that it's hard not being able to go to school with your teachers and your friends, but we're going to help you learn from home. To do that, teachers from across the state of Maine have teamed up with the Maine Department of Education, Educate Maine, and Maine Public to create an educational series designed just for you. From the comfort of your own home, you can turn on your TV and watch lessons taught by Maine teachers on math, science, social studies, reading, writing, music, art, and so much more. There's a lot to explore, so let's get started.
Hey mathematicians! My name is Nazreen Griffin, and I'm a 4th grade teacher at Connors Elementary in Lewiston. I'm so excited to be here today. But before we begin our lesson, let's take a quick moment to do a breathing exercise. Now I want you to think of the number 8 lying down sideways, a lazy 8. And I want you to inhale in through your nose as I trace the loop, and exhale out through your mouth Inhale in through your nose and exhale out through your mouth. One more time. Inhale in through your nose and exhale out through your mouth. Doesn't that feel good?
I love that one. At any rate, you can find all of those exciting and informative videos archived right on our website. We're very proud of this project and grateful to Maine educators for making it happen. Okay, so that's one thing we did for Anywhere, Anytime Learning in the interim. The other thing we're working on, as I mentioned before, is an online learning platform. We have two large projects underway. One had already started before the emergency. Maine DOE was partnering with the Children's Cabinet and with DHHS to develop a Maine-specific online social emotional learning curriculum. That work has been underway and continues, and they expect to have a K through 12 curriculum, including materials, ready for the startup of the fall semester. And that can be accessed by any teacher, anytime, and at no cost. And so I think the cost of some of the social emotional curricula was prohibitive in many cases, and this is an opportunity for anybody to access it. And the other very daunting project that we're in the middle of will be a full Maine Learning Results scope and sequence, all content areas available for K through 12. These will be lessons taught by Maine educators with materials and resources also provided on an open access platform so that all Maine educators can access it and either enhance or augment what they're doing with remote learning or even in the classroom to keep students practiced on online on remote learning of some sort. And also it could be accessed by families, it can be accessed by students independently in those higher grades. So we are expecting to, and we're paying stipends to educators to basically sell us and help put together the entire scope and sequence of this. So we've put out an application, and we're really grateful to people who have already expressed a lot of interest. And let's see, so that's underway. We expect to have the first quarter, an entire first quarter available by September 6th. That is our goal, and last check, that was on track. So I guess my point is we are setting very high goals for ourselves at the department to support our educators and the schools and the communities and families in every possible way. Social emotional learning curriculum, I won't go into a lot of detail on it, but you should know that it is based on national models and uses research-based, evidence-based strategies and approaches. And we're also utilizing models that our state currently uses and other states' models. So that we're taking the best of the best for Maine students. And it has been a partnership with CDC and DHHS. Our DOE experts have also been offering through their online office hours and through webinars and through direct synchronous trainings to the field and to families a lot of support with respect to mental health and mindfulness. We have yoga classes, meditation classes each morning. They've been among the most requested and attended sessions. There have even been sessions held for parents to be doing with their children at home. There's also a joint training with DHHS on identifying and addressing concerns regarding potential abuse or neglect during this remote learning time, which has been an ongoing concern of ours. We're also, as I mentioned, very interested in any opportunity to redesign our system since we have this break. I think that everyone in education can say, if we could just stop time for a minute, what would we change? What would we do differently or better? Well, time in a sense has stopped for public education nationwide, and we don't want to let this opportunity go by without our taking every possible advantage. So our federal programs team applied for an assessment waiver, which allows Maine students to have been free this spring of the usual Maine education assessment program. And that is a great example of an opportunity to redesign. Our hope is, and this will take a few years, and so we're going to need you all to be patient with us, but our hope is to either develop or to find an assessment system that will be responsive and that will measure what Maine teachers are teaching, and that will match our curriculum and instruction versus having teachers have to model curriculum and instruction to fit the assessment. That has been a backward process driven by No Child Left Behind for about 20 years now, and we have a chance to say, you know what, we're going to teach what we need our children to learn. We're going to provide instruction in the way they're going to best learn it. And we're going to find a way to measure that. And we do ask for everybody's patience, because in the interim, if we have to, we're not sure how that'll look because we can't turn that on a dime. So for the short term, we'll have to say that, you know, our assessment, whatever it might be, would not be considered to be necessarily a valid measure, because we are going to be in a very deliberate transition period for a while. Our content specialists have been offering professional development in remote learning practices, Remote Learning 101, and that includes everything from synchronous instruction, kind of like what we're doing right now, a live Zoom type instruction. There's asynchronous, which is, I think, favored by families who have inflexible schedules or multiple children who need to be sharing computers or other technology. So asynchronous is when a teacher sets up their lesson plan in something like Google Classroom, and students can access that lesson and interact on their own time. And we're also providing professional development in low-tech and no-tech learning experiences. We're very interested also in a couple of partnerships that we have around outdoor learning, nature-based learning, and other exciting opportunities that may be unexpected gifts from this unfortunate break. Also, our Office of School and Student Support and the school safety team have been offering all along and continue to offer trauma-informed practices and help with revising emergency preparedness and response plans. We also have been responding to the emergency, securing resources and systemic support through policy and guidance. A couple of executive orders that we helped to draft include number 15, which continued to pay school employees through the school year, and number 52, which provided flexibilities around Chapter 115 and certification. Particularly, it's for a number of things, people whose college programs stopped before the end of the program, or those who had to go in and get, or were supposed to get fingerprinted for the CHRC, those types of things that were made either very difficult or impossible due to the COVID-19 emergency have been waived as a result of that particular executive order. We are also working with the governor's office still today, but we hope very soon that there will be an executive order that provides flexibility around school budgets and the processes. The public meetings in particular are providing a major challenge for districts. We have also provided many guidance documents and communications through priority notices, keeping the field updated in real time. And we have been working with our very diverse group of stakeholders to develop unified guidance on grading practices. We've also provided guidance for hosting graduations and for summer programs recently, and that was per request from the field. The fact that we created this guidance for graduation and for summer programs should not be interpreted as an endorsement by DOE that we're thinking everyone should be having an in-person experience, whether at graduation ceremony or a summer program. Rather, we were aware that some, and everybody, our state is so different. We have very tiny educational settings where it was reasonable for them to work on that or to attempt an in-person summer program. And so therefore, we worked with school nurses, with the CDC, and with all of our stakeholders, and we examined models from other states as well. Let's see, and also we've provided guidance, we're working on guidance for reintegration to in-person instruction again in the fall. That guidance is being informed by an enormous group of diverse stakeholders representing almost every possible voice you could imagine. And that advisory group is guiding and informing the work. It's not ready yet, but we hope to have a framework that would allow districts to measure their models and plans that they're right now developing for the fall against what we think would be the most important considerations. We also provided guidance for the equitable sharing of CARES Act funds with our private school partners, and I'll talk a little more about that in a minute. So the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund provided our biggest opportunity to meet that Connect Kids Now goal of 100% connectivity for all students. We were able to work with our partners at the Department of Administrative and Financial Services, where there are professional procurement specialists. And so rather than having DOE employees out there trying to negotiate deals with cell companies and data providers, we were so grateful for the partnership and support of the professional procurement specialists who were able to get the best possible deals so that we were able to make that funding stretch as far as possible to meet the needs that continued to blossom and grow in our awareness. We also, let's see, yeah, that was, I already talked about that, so that was it. The Elementary and Secondary Schools Emergency Relief Fund, that's the funding that will reimburse local school districts for COVID-related expenses. And that funding is provided by the federal government to the states based on our Title I receivership. What that means is the amount we got as a state was dependent upon the number of disadvantaged children who attend our schools. The state then took that funding as required by the CARES Act and disseminated it, allocated it to the local public school districts based on their Title I receivership, which again is based on and dependent upon the number of disadvantaged students. And then the local education agencies, we advised, per the CARES Act, would make an equitable share available to the local private schools that serve students from those towns. That's specific language in the CARES Act law. Unfortunately, right before the release of the application to the districts, the night before, in fact, the United States Department of Education sent out some guidance that you might have heard about. This guidance is contrary to the law and was asking districts to make their equitable share based on not the disadvantaged count in the private schools, but rather the full entire count. So it would be the state receiving based on disadvantaged numbers, and then the local public districts receiving based on disadvantaged numbers, and then the private schools receiving their part based on all of their students, which would have created a very inequitable and discriminatory, and also specifically directly against the law way of interpreting that formula. So it placed us in a very difficult position, but we did, Maine was one of the first 3 states to make the public recommendation to our local education agencies to follow the law. The CARES Act law has very specific language in how that allocation should be made, and that's what we recommended that our local districts do. And you may hear more about that coming in the future. We've already had a couple of complaints from private schools who are feeling that we should be following the guidance and not following the law. But for now, we're following the law, and we've advised the local districts to do the same. And let's see, what else do we have? The Education Stabilization Fund also has a competitive grant that is of great interest to the department, and we are already our application is underway. There's $300 million available nationwide for an innovative redesign of remote learning. And so Department of Education has partnered with the University of Maine system and the Maine Community College system. And we are creating a two-part kind of visionary project design. The first part involves the training and certifying of as many Maine educators and school and district leaders as who are interested, and as many of our Department of Education staff members. This will be a big open source, think Coursera, if you're familiar with those online unlimited, access courses. Training and certifying everybody that has anything to do with Maine education as an innovation engineer. This is based on a program that's offered through the Foster Center at University of Maine in Orono. And also the community colleges have an idea incubator or an innovation center that we will be accessing to develop a course in collaboration with our higher ed folks and our content specialists here at the department. We'll be offering that course, and through the course, educators and school leaders and district leaders will be developing plans for innovative models of providing remote learning. And the second phase of our proposed project will provide grants to schools who are willing to pilot and adapt to their setting the innovative models that are designed through this course. That's another piece we're going, and our grant is due the end of June. It's well underway now, and we're going to be looking for roughly $15 million in that application. We continue to provide virtual learning for educators, and all along we've been providing, I think, just over the top high quality, and again, we've been recognized across the nation for it. Here's the archived professional learning webinar library that was just created in real time during this time of emergency by our professional experts in anything you can think about. So there's like subtraction strategies, and I'd love to show you just maybe one. Elementary, active supervision in the pre-K classroom for ed techs, or challenging behaviors. It goes on and on. I just want you to know it's there. Check that out. It's our archived.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Archived library. And meanwhile, in addition to all of the extra communications, preparation, professional development, technical support, and other resources that we've been working very hard to obtain and procure and provide to the field, we've also been keeping up our day-to-day operations. If you are an educator listening right now and you are looking at a July 1 deadline for your certification, great news. You can apply right now and you'll have it in plenty of time. They have no wait right now in the certification office. Our federal programs team is doing double duty, doing their regular ESSA related Title I, Title II, all of those titles, plus providing support for the CARES Act. MLTI continues to meet with our advisory group, and they are facing some really important and difficult decisions around what the future of MLTI is going to look like, having had this experience that we're still going through. We're also proud to say that we just hosted a 1,000 plus person virtual annual student conference. There's every year this wonderful, enormous statewide MLTI student conference where students and teachers highlight their amazing work. And this year it was, for the first time ever, fully virtual, and it was exciting to be able to provide it still. We are also providing trauma-informed and training specific for the teams who are in charge of safety and emergency preparedness in every district. So those trainings are continuing as well. So I did mention that we're providing a framework for reintegration to in-person learning, and we have a number of stakeholders, and sources that we're using include the CDC, National CDC, which for the record has vacillated by the their guidance doesn't tend to stay around very long, and it changes frequently. The Maine CDC, that is very reliable. We're using a study from Johns Hopkins, from American Federation of Teachers, and we're looking at international models, and we're looking at what's happening in other states. We're also providing training and support for, I mentioned that one already, for the district's collaborative planning team members. Those are the folks in charge of safety and emergency preparedness. So we did receive a few questions, most of which I think were answered within the context here, but just in case, I'm gonna go through a few of them quickly here. Will schools and the return to classroom plans be differentiated according to location, such as county or region? Without a crystal ball just yet, my guess is yes. As I look at our reopening plan statewide, we are trying to look very strategically at where is there community transmission, where is there not community transmission. A lot is going to depend upon those external public health markers, in addition to the capacities and limitations in any particular school setting. The process that we're using to assure special education services to students across districts. We have been offering, so our special education director, Erin Frazier, has a phenomenal webpage filled with resources that are updated daily. They have her team is working daily office hours and training for special ed folks across the state. They have also procured training in telemedicine, telehealth, including training psychological services providers to be able to do remote assessments. They have just snapped to as quickly as anybody else in terms of providing incredible supports for educators, for special ed directors who meet weekly with Erin in a live consult. And she's also been meeting regularly with a parent group, a parent advocacy group, to hear concerns and hopes from the families who are, of course, bearing a disproportionate challenge where their children are struggling learners to begin with. But we have been, please do check out that webpage. The Department of Education's special education webpage will provide so much information, resources, and support. What assistance are we offering to SAUs with purchasing PPE and other safety supplies and equipment? We have asked our director of the Student Safety Center to work with our partners at MEMA and our partners at the Department of Administrative and Financial Services to 3 months ahead of time. We did this a few weeks ago. We gave them all of the numbers, our projected numbers of students, projected numbers of staff and adults who work in a school setting, the projected numbers of those staff members and students who are more likely to be in very tight or close proximity with children. And CDC is helping to vet that list in terms of what types of PPE or special sanitizing supplies or other equipment would be necessary to keep everybody safe. And so we have priced that out. We have, I believe our order is placed. I also have to say this, so we're doing as much, so the answer is, what assistance are we providing? Everything we possibly can. And I also have to say this disclaimer, that right now, all of these same resources have been deployed for the past 2.5 months to try to secure enough PPE for healthcare workers. And we're barely getting there. And we still have a long way to go. There are global shortages of some of these supplies. And so what I can say is that our orders have been placed well ahead of time so that the items that you'll need will be procured. And we also have provided our estimate of how much more it may cost schools to operate in person in the fall in the event that nothing changes. So assuming that we don't end up with more robust testing, more robust contact tracing, a vaccination of some sort, an abatement of, or a lightening of the numbers of cases and so forth. If things stay just as they are and we had to follow all of the CDC guidance for schools, how much it might cost to provide that. And it's close to 230 million. I apparently have 2 more minutes. Let me quickly also say that we were asked about, we're encouraged to include and support content areas instruction. Oh, yes, so we're really promoting people. I think there was a question concerning how music and art and language and some of those content areas that tend to be marginalized, would they be more particularly marginalized in an environment of emergency or remote learning? And our guidance is all, oh no, in fact, we would love to have, those are the things that make life worth living. And we want to create interdisciplinary units of study that will be shared and across the state that would include, and maybe even as a centerpiece, these very critical content areas. So we definitely are promoting interdisciplinary, project-based, authentic, hands-on learning. It's the most efficient way to provide what will likely be a need for remediation and also a re-engagement strategy. So we're certainly going to be in strong support of all of those. There's a question about staff members who may or may not be ready to return to work, and those staff-specific HR questions would be left to the districts to develop their own plans. We'll be there to help support and guide. We're urging everyone as your front line, no matter whether it's planning your curriculum, engaging your families, planning for your staff members and their fears or concerns, we should all just remember to start with compassion, start with connecting, reaching out, and recognizing that with the world in the place we're at right now, with our country in absolute disarray, here in Maine, we can take very good care of one another, and we really need to. We need to reach out with deep compassion and have our answers pull somebody in and support and hold somebody up rather than marginalize. So that would be my quick interim guidance. And then I just wanted to say that we receive a lot of feedback from the field, and almost all of it has been warm and supportive and in general, like expressing gratitude. And so we wanted to include just a few little, like just every day, these are unsolicited messages that come to our emails to describe the experience that the field is having when they are interacting with my phenomenal staff at the Department of Education. And I'm so proud of the work that we're doing, and we're going to continue to work as hard as we can and to continue to improve. And we put a lot of feedback for you to look at. If you're interested, this will be archived and recorded. So for those who were unable to join us, or if you just want to come and read these nice accolades. So, okay, I guess that's all I have for today. We will make another public briefing when when we feel that that's necessary. We don't think that a weekly update is going to be an important thing to have, but as events unfold, as new large projects come to fruition, we will give this another try, and we look forward to getting your feedback from this experience. So feel free to reach out and let us know how it went. Maybe I'll be even less clunky with Zoom next time. Thank you. Take care.